imagine it's Mother's Day, right? And my wife and I don't have a super close relationship with our mothers. So it's really hard. But I wanted to spend time with her this weekend. And I made a really strong effort, but I also knew I had to prepare for this. But I also had to get a really important episode launched. And I was struggling with the technology, and I work in technology. And so that made it really hard because I spent 3 hours today trying to get this technology to work so I could produce this episode to honor this amazing chef and to start the launch of season 4 and wanting to spend time with my wife and my dog. It's very time consuming, but it's incredibly rewarding. And once you get things down, normally when the technology is working, there was an outage for one of the products I used this weekend. Normally, when it's working, you can streamline a lot of things like editing. You can get done pretty quick. You can knock out reels, little short video clips for marketing. You can do those kind of things. But what makes it hard is just the time. And again, some people will podcast, they'll produce one episode a month, right? And I sort of do that, but I actually do about two. Um, but try not to be a perfectionist and be careful about how much you spend on the technology. But my advice is not answering the question, but don't be super cheap on your microphone like I was because I ended up buying a second one. And that it just kind of depends on what your budget is. But if you can afford it, upgrade a little bit because this is an amazing microphone. You can't hear the door open, the door slam, the dog barking, any of it. So the editing is easier, not harder. But really, what makes it hard is spend more time with my wife. That's why I'm excited that Chef Steven's part of our team. And Jen, I'm hoping you come back on because maybe you'll have some time because you've been an amazing supporter. Um, so I think that's what makes it hard. Thanks for the question.
Allie's
Thank you.
next.
Yeah, Ellie, you have a question.
Yes, Michael, longtime listener, first time caller. So, my question for you today is
I love it.
how do you deal with days and times that you struggle for inspiration and days that you really struggle to record a podcast? Because we all have those days where sometimes we're not feeling it. How do you overcome? Have you ever had those days?
Oh, absolutely.
And how
Today,
can you tell
today.
us? Oh, wow. Can you tell us how you overcome those times?
I've learned to step back. So my goal today was to release this episode, this amazing episode for season 4 with Ashley Brown at 1 o'clock. I didn't get it out till almost 3 o'clock. And I posted on Facebook and said, I just want you to know there are technical challenges because people expect, you know, consistency, right? So it's really hard to always get that on the dot. And again, if you're busy with other things, it comes fast. I try to get a lot of editing and stuff done during the week so that the weekend I have free time and I feel more relaxed. But sometimes when it creeps up, it makes it hard. And the hardest thing for me, like I said, is I really need more help. I want to coach other people. Maybe it's in Toastmasters. Maybe there's somebody that's excited to learn. I'm excited to teach, but I want to interview more chefs, and that's what makes it hard. Is I have a list right now that's wide open all over the world, and what makes it hard is I can't do that because I have to slow down, not speed up. It's a great question.
Thank you for answering that, Michael. All right, looks back to you, Madam Executive Producer.
Sure. Is there any more questions before we go on to
Melissa.
evaluations?
Melissa has one.
Melissa?
Yes, I'm right here. Michael, I just want to know, how do you balance work and your podcast?
Honestly, I want this to be my work. I was in conversation with NPR to syndicate this podcast. People say you have a radio voice. Well, it was really happening And then they laid off half the staff at the University of Washington. And so my dream fell apart. But for me, it's very hard to balance. And I gotta get better at it, honestly, because I want to spend more time with my wife. I want to spend more time with other parts of my life. But at the same time, I really love connecting with these chefs and helping them in their careers and helping them get connected beyond what they see. So I'm very driven to do that, but that's what makes it hard is that I can't interview all the chefs that I want to interview. Great question.
Thank you. And I see, Joni, you have one question. I think we have time for one more.
Mary Ann had her hand
No,
up.
not a question. Mary Ann has
Okay.
a question, so everyone can
Mary.
see me.
All right, Mary Ann?
I'm considering the podcast project
Mhm.
as, the level 4. And I'm curious how long exactly, and I know you can't give me a truly exactly number, does it take to produce one episode? Because I think you have to do 8, if I recall.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure if I would go beyond that because
Sure,
I
I
have
understand.
a topic that could go on beyond that, and I do other things with that topic. So
Okay.
I am interested, but I'm not certain that I want to make that leap.
Can I ask a qualifying question?
Sure,
How long do you want your episodes to be?
about an hour.
Okay. That's going to be a lot of time if you're focused on editing, if you're worried about the ahs and ums and things like that. But I'll let
No,
you
I'm not
know.
worried about that, honestly.
Okay. Then probably very little time if you're not worried about crossover talk and things like that. The crossover talk is the hardest thing. But because we're Toastmasters, are you going to interview people or just have like a single conversation?
I think it would probably be more engaging with 2 people.
Okay.
So it would be an interview format. I do have a lot of material that I could do like a YouTube episode for, but I feel like it's not really podcast worthy. So,
Okay. Okay.
it's kind of 2 different formats, 2 different animals.
Well, the other thing I could say is it's hard in the beginning to learn the processes, but once you get them down, it's not that hard. I use AI. I use a program called Descript, and it's amazing because I can eliminate ahs and ums and things like that, the ones that I feel are important to eliminate within 5 minutes. I mean, it used to take me hours because I would manually go through, but you literally can do some really creative editing that doesn't take long. The part that's the hardest is crossover talk, things like that. And then just how picky you are. So, I mean, you could produce an episode in an hour and maybe spend an hour and a half, editing, or it just really depends on where you're at. I want my chefs to shine, so I spend a lot of time, but I'm easing off on it now and just kind of accepting it, as normal, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think it's a little bit different in that mine would be more geared for like a job hunter. So I'm
Okay.
not necessarily trying to make the guest shine. I mean, of course, I want them to look good
Hmm.
and, intelligent and credible,
Understood.
but it's not, it's not their like moment in the sun here. It's to really help other people. So it's really the information that's the star of the show here, and I would want to get that information out to as many people as I could while I'm doing this.
Understood. Does that answer your question?
It does,
Okay.
and I would really be grateful if, when you're done, if you could put in the chat that software you use for editing.
Oh, absolutely. Somebody could type it. It's called Descript. It's incredible, actually. It's good for video and audio editing.
That's awesome.
Right.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's a
Really
time saver.
appreciate
Like
you.
All right,
it really saves a lot of time. There's one
Great,
other
okay.
question I know we're running low on time, but I want to
we are,
ask
yeah.
or answer this question really quick. Chef Mimi
Okay.
just joined and she asked about, let me see here. I just see it in the chat. I've been waiting to have my own podcast, but know that with a busy schedule as a chef and my perfectionism, I can relate. I will have to spend a lot of time editing. Just wondering if there's a service out there where you can tell me to each episode, pay them to edit all the way. If needed, there's I'm just rereading it. How much, and is there such a thing? There definitely is, Chef Mimi. There's a lot of, like, Fiverr, I think, does a lot of editing. I actually know someone who loves their editor and they're not that expensive. So if you want to reach out, she's a friend of mine anyway, but if you want to reach out, we can chat about it anytime.
Okay. All
Okay,
right. Thank you for that. Okay. So now we will move on to our round robin feedback evaluation, and this is for both podcasters. So if anyone out there wants to start the evaluation, if you have any comments for either podcaster, anybody's hands up?
I don't see any.
Well, I guess I'll
No.
go since everybody's gearing to go in. Well,
Okay.
as the timer, my suggestion would actually be that you space out the time, and this would be for the interviewer. I know that normally there's a get to know you segment, so I would have suggested that instead of asking your presenter about themselves, that you would give a basic description. He's done this, he's amazing, he has worked with this person, that person. So it's there in the beginning, and that might save you some time after already introducing his credentials. So we already know why we should listen to him, as opposed to hearing it somewhere during the course of time. Because what happens is we tend to spend time explaining those parts of it. And I realized that you lost a lot of time based on that. I loved the conversational tone and banter between you. I can say I am not the podcast listen to type, but I went into this listening as if I were on Clubhouse and listening to you on a podcast. The tone made it engaging. I liked both the chef's use of descriptive language, and I like Arthur's banter, where there was comedy and fun associated with how he was introducing it to keep everyone engaged. Because though I can see the visuals, I think technically on a podcast, no one would be able to. So the banter gave that kind of a connection with the words, etc. What I can suggest is putting in more descriptive language on both sides, for both the interviewer and for the interviewee, because technically, if it's supposed to be a podcast, I'm not going to be able to see you. I'm not going to be able to see the smile, the laughter. So when you made a joke about having to apologize, the person he was supposed to apologize to, I'm assuming was his wife. I assumed was his wife, but it helps if you told me this before so I could follow along with the story as someone new. But overall, great work on the use of time, love the banter and the connection. Back to you, Madam G.
I was worried that
Thank you.
I'd make someone sleep on the couch. That's all.
Yeah. And speaking of wife, Carrie has her hand raised.
Thank you.
Uh-oh.
Thank you, Fred. No, I just really wanted to compliment both Arthur and Michael. Both have such passion. Number one, Arthur, in the interviewing style that you have is very nice. And Michael, your passion just explodes out of the computer here. And I'm upstairs.
Mhm.
Anyway, congratulations on 4 years. And I know how hard it has been, and yet so rewarding. And I don't know, I think for all of you doing podcasts, I think it's a wonderful way to really excel much faster in Toastmasters, I would say. So congratulations.
Okay. Greg has his hand raised.
Challenges here. Plus, I have to deal with the stove very shortly, and it's dinner.
Oh,
However, I wanted, Michael, thank you for inviting me to come out today.
absolutely.
It's an honor to be here. I'm Greg Gazin. I'm the host of the Toastmasters. So anything podcast is always of interest. First of all, Arthur, great job on the questions. I thought the questions were extremely appropriate. They were well targeted. Obviously, you did your homework. I noticed that there was a little bit of a timing issue. So perhaps feel free if you have to shift the questions a little bit, or if you find that perhaps your guest is straying, feel free to call them in. It's not a rude thing to do. It's the way to keep things overall very, very impressive interview.
Thank you, Greg. Coming from you, that means more than you know.
Michael, I thought that you did a phenomenal job.
Oh,
I love the fact that you were very specific and very purposeful, and you gave names, dates, and places. So that just said, as opposed to saying, "Well, I talked to this chef," etc.
no.
You gave that information, which was extremely valuable. Your passion and your excitement, I mean, it's really obvious. I also love the fact that you were transparent, even mentioning how there was challenges with your relationships with your mother, and of course that makes you very, very real. Two quick tiny points. I noticed you were looking down at your screen. It's because everyone is there on the screen, but I felt that you were talking to me, and I would have loved for me to see you directly. So occasionally try to look up. And one other little suggestion, and this is very valuable, especially if you're trying to encourage someone to do something, is to have them imagine yourself having your own podcast, or picture yourself on the cover of a magazine, something like that. And if you do something like that, then you pause, it adds even more impact to your appeal. But overall,
thank you.
I'm glad I was able to get back. In fact, I've managed to just get back in time.
Oh my gosh.
I am looking forward. I haven't had a chance yet, but I'm certainly looking forward to checking your podcast.
Great. Thank you, Greg. Thank you for that. And we will have to move on to our improv master, our improv portion of the meeting for table topics. So with that, I will turn it over to our improv master, Fred.
Thank you, Madam Executive Producer. This is a session we rarely have in our club, but for occasions such as this, we decided to have it based on the theme of food and cooking. And I did it a little different. I've got it by categories. So whoever volunteers or gets voluntold, I'm going to ask you a category you're going to pick, and then I'm going to pick a question from that category. So who would like to be my first victim? I mean, table topics participant, improv participants. Anyway, how about you, Baxter? Oh, actually, Greg raised his hand. Okay, Greg. Let me pull up the categories here. Your categories are cooking adventures or disasters, the chef within, or food for thought. Which category would you like, Greg?
What cooking disasters?
Okay. What's the biggest cooking mistake you've ever made? Would you like me to repeat it?
No, I'm good. Thank you very much for that question, Mr. Topics Master. I have to take myself back about 20 years, and the young lady, well, probably more than 20 maybe. I was dating a young lady who really, really loved banana bread. So of course, I looked around. I tried to find different types of recipes. I looked for ways to try to improve what was in it. So for example, I added some walnuts, and I looked at using some chocolate chips. So of course I went out, I got all the ingredients. Now I know banana bread is an easy thing for you all, but not for me. And when I was finished with the recipe and it came out of the oven, it looked like soup. And for the life of me, I could not understand why. I think it's because I mistook icing sugar for flour. They looked very, very similar to me, and they were in a jar that weren't marked. Now, all was not lost because, interestingly enough, it tasted quite interesting. My girlfriend at the time really was not overly impressed, but when I poured it over vanilla ice cream, she said, "What? This isn't really bad, but it would be okay if you didn't make it again." So, Mr. Topic Master, fellow Toastmasters, that was one of my disasters in cooking. I've come a long way from it since, but it's certainly a story that I'll never forget. Back to you, Mr. Topics Master.
Thank you. Who would like to be next? Baxter, you want to be next? Okay, he raised his hand, but I told him to, so. Kate, Baxter, the categories are cooking adventures or disasters, the chef within, or food for thought.
How about cooking disasters?
Okay. Your question is, have you ever tried to impress someone with a meal? If so, how did it go?
Well, I can actually think of two meals, one that went really well and one that went really horribly. How many of you have ever watched Chopped? Yeah. So the premise of Chopped is that the chefs get a basket full of random, seemingly random ingredients and they make a meal out of it. Well, a few years ago, I had a roommate. He and I always watched Chopped. And we decided that once a week, because he wasn't a person who cooked it all, he would bring home 5 random items and I would make dinner. This day, he brought home a nice kielbasa, some vegetables, and potatoes so that I can make the meal. And we're sitting there talking, and just like the show, he goes, "Chef, how come you used ginger powder to flavor the vegetables?" Or, "Chef, what's your plan for cooking up the kielbasa?" And we would talk, and I would answer him. Well, in the midst of answering, I'm seasoning everything, and yes, I did use ginger powder. Now, if any of you have ever used ginger powder, you know that you don't overuse ginger powder. Well, I did. And it was the one meal that we never ate. Usually I'll eat my mistakes. I couldn't even eat that one, and we decided to go out to dinner. Back to you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you. Joni's next, and then Jen. And Joni wanted food for thought. So here's Joni's question, and that is, what food best describes your personality and why?
The food that best describes my personality is ackee and saltfish. Now, I'm Jamaican, in case you couldn't tell from the accent. And the thing about it is, it's a national dish of Jamaica, but it's a fruit that was brought from Africa that is now actually originated from Jamaica, that's combined with codfish. Now, I don't remember the name of the actual fish, but this is fish that was imported from, get this, Canada. And those combination created our national dish. Now, like me, if you meet me and you get to know me, I'm an unusual blend of things that come together to just make this wonderful meal. So I guess in that way, it's triumphant. But sometimes when you're describing it, like my friends who have the hard time of trying to describe me, you get the, how can a fruit that if you don't open it correctly will poison and kill you with the lowest grade fish come together with flour and green bananas and potatoes to make an exquisite meal? Like ackee and saltfish, I am something that has to be experienced. But once I'm experienced, you never stop talking about how the fruit that could poison you if it didn't open correctly, mixed with the lowest grade of fish from Canada, with a tree from Africa, that blended with potatoes and flour, as in wheat flour that isn't even from Jamaica, to create a dish so scrumptious that it will forever be memorable. Back to you, Table Topics Master.
Thank you. And taking us home is Jen. You want me to read the categories again, Jen?
No, I would love the chef within.
The chef within. Your question is, if you could cook with any celebrity chef, who would it be and what would you make?
Oh my gosh. I love this question so much. It would be with Chef Mimi because I have listened to her talk all the time, and the idea of being able to combine her vivacity and her creativity and her way of being a chef with my absolute neophytism to figure out how to be triumphant in that situation fills me with so much joy. And I think the thing that I would learn how to cook, I would let Chef Mimi be the expert because she would be able to tell me exactly what I wanted to eat that day or serve to my family who would be so graced by Chef Mimi in our kitchen. And I love the idea of that. And I could just go on and on about all the different people that I would like to cook with. And the chef within is one of those categories where, you get to say to yourself, oh, I could do that, or oh no, that's way too overwhelming. I'm gonna have to find a way to make this work. And so in the time that we're given, we get to pick a celebrity chef and we all get the opportunity to be a celebrity chef. That's one of the things I love about food, right? Like you get to be the star of the show because you're the one putting it together. You're putting all of the people together. You're putting all of the food and the ingredients together, and you're creating this delectable Epicurean experience for everyone. And I love the fact that that's possible with food. Toastmaster, back to you.
Okay. I've got good news, everybody. Our host master just informed me we can do 2 more table topics. So do I have 2 more volunteers? Or you get voluntold?
I'll take one, Fred.
Allie, okay.
Yes, sir.
You want to hear the categories again?
Yep. Yes, please.
Cooking adventures or disasters, the chef within, or food for thought.
Give me the disasters.
Well, you're going to get the last one of that one.
Okay.
And your question is, tell us about a dish you cooked that turned out surprisingly great or terribly wrong.
Or terribly wrong. Okay, so I'm going to give a little twist on this. For most of you that know me, I became a single parent in 2016, and up until that point, I grilled steaks and hamburger, and I chopped up hamburger. I didn't cook anything else. So I had to learn to be a cook for my 8-year-old daughter. That was a challenge. The one food that I struggle with to cook is chicken, because I'm so afraid of chicken. I never really cooked chicken because I was so scared of salmonella and not getting it done. The funny thing is, the disastrous courses that I cooked, I would cook chicken on the grill, cook it on the stove, bake it, and my daughter would always say, "It's dry." And I would try and try and try, and then my partner joined us, and I would cook chicken, and they would say, "It's like chicken jerky. You're cooking chicken jerky." To this day, I still struggle with cooking chicken, but I found some tips. I use olive oil, and as I'm grilling chicken, I will baste it in olive oil or other seasonings, and they're saying I'm getting better with chicken. I can cook a Chinese meal from pretty much scratch, and it looks better than the Chinese restaurant menus. I garnish it with put rice down and orange chicken or sweet and sour chicken or General Tso's chicken or what have you, and then garnish it with broccoli around, and it looks beautiful. I can grill you a steak to perfection. Chicken is my Achilles heel. I'm always worried that I'm not going to cook it just right. So at some point, I would love for Michael or the chefs to give me some tips on cooking chicken just right. So that is one of my failures with cooking. Back to you, Mr. Table Topics
Thank you.
Master.
It looks like Sandra's going to take us home. Sandra, would you like me to read the categories again?
No, give me the adventures.
Well, that was it for the cooking adventure. So the only things left are the chef within and food for thought.
Okay, food for thought.
Okay, here's yours. If leadership were a dish, what would be its main ingredients?
If leadership were a dish, what would be its main ingredient? I would have to say a beautifully golden roasted turkey, because it takes a long time to be served. It takes a long time for it to be roasted to perfection to keep its juices of leadership inside. It takes a long time because it could be stuffed full of doubts, insecurities, and wonderfully tasted celery But at the same time, you're stuffed with things that you used to have and pre-notions that you used to believe. And you have to leave some of that apart to really grow and to be roasted to perfection to keep those juiciness in there. Now, because I'm a culinary artist per se, and a scientist by heart, I would have the right instruments to make sure my turkey and my leadership was to the delectable tastes that I needed it to be. One of such is I would have the thermometer. I would be checking its temperature. How's it going? Just as we do with leadership. How is it going? How am I doing in my leadership? How am I doing helping others through their leadership journey? So that's not just the temperature on them, but the temperature on myself to make sure I'm doing what's needed. Then there's the side dishes of turkey. You'd have the cranberry sauce, not everybody's favorite, but that is absolutely a mandatory must on my leadership plate. The sweetness, that's the accolades for everyone involved to ensure they stay with it. And then there's what I call the Brussels sprout salad, because nobody else likes it, but I like it. The shaved Brussels sprouts with all the trimmings. That's the things that people don't like to do in leadership. On the side of your turkey and your other condiments. That is my main dish, is roasted turkey to perfection for leadership. Back to you, Table Topic Master.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you all to the improv participants. And I'm going to turn things over to our hostmaster to wrap up the meeting before she turns it back over to me.